He's worked on many games including Clank, God of War and The Order 1886. Today I talked to Phil Nowell about why he decided to pass on leading The Order, the number one thing he learned starting his own mobile company, and a new feature from Google which allows you to have loads of users from the first day you release your app. P.S. Sorry about my microphone this week.
From jollygoodjobs.com, it's the Jolly Good Show, discussing the games industry and life within it. Here's your host, Mark Pope.
Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the Jolly Good Show, a new podcast in which I'm going to talk to people in the video game industry about where they work and what they do. My name is Mark Pope. By day I'm a video game programmer and I've also created jollygoodjobs.com, which is a site for finding jobs in the games industry. I'm going to get right to it and introduce my first guest, Phil Nowell, who works on the Google Play team. Hey Phil, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. How about you?
Good, yeah. So I'll start by just setting the stage a little bit. Phil and I know each other. About 10 years ago, we worked together at Heavy Iron Studios, and we worked together for about 2 years, although it seems like longer when I think back on it. So, Phil, can you remind me, what did you do while you were at Heavy Iron?
Well, when I started at Heavy Iron, they were just wrapping up a Scooby-Doo game, and that was just like the first week or two where I was kind of ramping up, just looking at code. I was fresh out of college at the point. And then after that, we started on the brand new project of SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom, where I worked on lots of different aspects of the game, from like boss fights to player mechanics and attacks and crate stacking and just all kinds of stuff.
It's just not a game unless there's crates, and that means like crate stacking.
Yeah, precisely. So yeah, that was, and actually looking back, I think that was probably one of the most fun games that I've worked on, because I felt like basically anything goes in the SpongeBob universe. If it's funny, then it's a great addition to the game. So I felt like everybody could just come up with these kind of wacky ideas, and the general attitude was like, yeah, let's put that in. That's great. That's awesome. Yeah, I remember that. And if you work on games that are more set in a sort of realistic universe, as it were, it can be a bit harder to make them fun, because you can't just put like, I just want to put like a floating platform right here in the middle of the room. It's like, well, what is it? Why is it floating? How did it get there? Right.
So,
yeah.
So that's go on.
Oh, it's a constant need to justify everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I remember about you at Heavy Iron was you really focused on the gameplay, and you love iterating on that.
Yeah. That's absolutely, that's always been kind of my MO, going forward through the rest of my game career as well. I've made a couple of career decisions based on am I getting enough out of the working on the gameplay in this game.
So after you left Heavy Iron, you went to work at Ready at Dawn. And then
yes.
You stayed there for like 7 years, which in games that's a pretty long stay there. So what took you to Ready at Dawn? And tell us about that.
Well, so I left Heavy Iron. Let me think. That was toward the end of 2004, and then I took a couple of months off just to kind of mess around and do some programming challenges and just kind of relax. But then, I started at Ready at Dawn January of 2005, and they were working on a Daxter for the PSP. It was a spin-off of the Jak and Daxter universe, where Daxter had his own game. And again, that was a really fun project, but it was a grind. It was the studio's first game, and so there was this really strong feeling of we have to prove ourselves. Like, this first game has to go incredibly well, or the studio's not going to make it. And so there was lots of this mindset of, all right, everybody put in everything you've got to really make this game work. So while it was a lot of fun to work on, we were working 100+ hour weeks for a while. Yeah.
It's pretty extreme. And you're saying gameplay was kind of a theme. Were you on gameplay on Daxter?
Yes, I've always been a gameplay programmer. I could say that, but gameplay, at least in my opinion, when you're working on gameplay, you have to be ready to kind of branch out, and rather than just go, okay, I need this engine feature, be able to kind of tackle that yourself. Like, you tend to be more of a kind of, the word that gets used is generalist, where, okay, I need these tools, okay, I'm going to make them. I'm not going to just, put in a request with the engine guys or the tools guys and wait around for it. Mm-hmm. It needs to get done, I'll just go ahead and do it. And that way the tools functionality, the engine functionality that you're working on, it's always informed by the gameplay. Like, the endpoint is always achieving the gameplay that you need to achieve. And so I feel like it's a good way to do it anyway, rather than just kind of trying to set up this context of, hey, engine programmer, can you make this for me? And then they take that and they interpret it as they see fit. And sometimes you end up getting back something that doesn't quite, it's not exactly what you needed for your situation or whatever. So
how did Daxter turn out then?
Dexter, I feel like Dexter turned out really well. It was one of the first PSP games, and so it didn't really push the hardware as much as we did in our later games, the God of War games for PSP. But the fact that it was a kind of a first round PSP game for us, it looked really good. It looked really well. It played really well. Lots of varied gameplay, and a decent length game too. I was really proud of it.
Cool. And I'm kind of curious, what were there any kind of like neat gameplay things that you did on that game, or anything kind of new that game brought on the gameplay front?
I don't. The first thing that comes to mind when you mention that is there was a train level, or kind of a subway level, where you go in, and at first you're just kind of walking through these kind of subway kind of ramps and stuff, but then you get to the point where you're getting into the train area, and you end up kind of zip lining down onto a running train, like you're on top of the train. And while sure, lots of people have done it before, it seems like every time I hear about someone doing a train sequence in a game, that they're really proud of it, and I totally understand it, because it's incredibly hard to kind of nail all these mechanics that you've got in kind of a stationary setting. Suddenly you're moving at a decent clip. Like, it has to be moving kind of fast for it to really feel like you're on a train. And there's just all these challenges that come up just from trying to do all these stationary things moving along.
And you couldn't get away with just moving the world and keeping the train still.
Well, we could have if we just, and we actually, I think that was an option we had considered, but to do that you just kind of have to keep going in a straight line. And we wanted our trains to kind of twist and turn, and we actually, like, as we were going along, you would jump and hover over to a train that was moving in the opposite direction, and then jump again onto another train to keep going in the same direction, and time. And like, one of the things that really got me, like, when you jump off of a moving train to get onto a train going in the opposite direction, you'd almost immediately just overshoot the second train. Like, it was just gone because you inherited all your velocity. So we had to put these volumes between train lines that would tell your velocity to kind of bleed that out. Like, it almost served as like air resistance. Like, as you're traveling off of one train line, you wouldn't notice it, but you would lose all your inherited velocity just to keep from completely overshooting the next train. And it was just little things like that you don't think about beforehand.
That's cool. So that was Daxter, and you were there for a total of 7 years. And you mentioned working on some God of War games as well. So I take it you probably started out as just kind of like a staff programmer, sort of mid-level guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think when you were like a lead or a gameplay lead or something like that later on.
Yeah, the very last title I had, I was working on The Order 1886 as the lead programmer for the project, and I actually ended up leaving about a year into that project, just because as a lead I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't really passionate about the project, and I felt like I was doing a disservice to everybody there and the project itself, trying to lead a project that I just wasn't 100% about. Plus, my wife was pregnant, and my son was born in 2012, and I took that as like
kind of a turning point, or a crossroads.
Right, and so I just decided to kind of take some time off after after Ready at Dawn, and do my own mobile thing.
So we'll get to that in a sec. So
Sure.
I didn't realise you worked on The Order. It's obviously out now, and it looks awesome.
Yes.
I know it's had sort of it's had a bit of a tough time critically, but yeah, it's still a big achievement, I think, and a really nice looking game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a lot of time spent. Like their material pipeline is amazing. They have actually like real, like kind of fabric capture technology. Like a guy there, Dave Newbelt, worked on a rig with a couple of DSLRs and a bunch of little LED lights, and he programmed it to be able to like light things at different angles and capture all that information, and bring that all the way back to actual like materials that they could plug into the game for as much like fidelity as possible. So they could have felt that looked like felt, or they could have leather that felt like leather. And
cool.
And that's just the material pipeline. And and there was plenty of work that went into just that. But then there's as much work went into like animation and camera, and it all ended up looking really beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's quite easy for critics to pile on a game and say, "Oh, we don't like this feature; it's terrible," that kind of thing. It gets kind of blown out of proportion. But if you sort of focus on the quality of what's there and the amount of work that goes into it, it's tremendous amount of work goes into these things, and it's a shame when you get a hard time critically when it's so good in so many ways.
Right.
Anyway, cool. So yeah, you already kind of mentioned it a little bit. So you were Ready at Dawn for 7 years, and then you felt like you were at a bit of a junction point and ready for a change, and you decided to do your own mobile thing. So.
It was actually.
Yeah, go on.
Oh, it was actually me and one other guy at Ready at Dawn at the time. We both left right around the same time, and we had already started working on just kind of playing around with Android and iOS and just kind of seeing what we could do, and then we kind of hit it more formally, with like a real effort. Once we had left, we were like, okay, we're actually gonna, put in our at least 8 hours a day working. Of course, that was a little difficult after the newborn came around, but it was. I was still able to put in a decent amount of work and make some progress. So we spent about, I want to say 6 or 7 months just making our own engine. We decided to make our own rather than go with Unity or any other middleware that we could have gone with, just because we kind of felt like we wanted complete control over what we were doing. And I think both of us kind of suffer from the not written here syndrome. And that was probably a bit of the decision as well. Was just we didn't want to be kind of limited by all the concerns you have whenever you go with another.
Yeah, any time you use a middleware or an engine, you've got to kind of accept what it gives you. It'll give you a lot of a leg up in a lot of ways. Like you can quickly, get models rendering on screen, etc. But it'll also come with certain constraints or other things you've got to accept, and you just got to kind of take those and run with them rather than fight them. Kind of. So you develop your own engine. So I just stepping back for a second. It's kind of a big leap to go from that would have been about 9 years getting a paycheck, medical insurance and all that stuff. And then you're married and you've got a kid. You're like, you know what? Who needs paychecks? So, what led you to make that big leap?
Like I said, I think the biggest thing was I just wasn't feeling passionate about what I was doing at Ready at Dawn, and the Order 1886 was looking like it was going to be a bit of a grind. And the more I thought about kind of crunching for something that I'm not passionate about, and having a newborn at home who's I'm not going to get to see much because of that crunch, I just kind of kept anticipating I don't like the way I'm seeing my life play out over the next year. So I thought, well, then I can do something about it. I don't have to stay with this kind of perceived future. I can pick another one. And this my partner Jeremy was leaving around that time, and it kind of struck me as, you know what, we could actually I think he was looking to go find employment somewhere else, but the more we talked, the more we're like, you know what, we could probably throw something together and make a play at having our own mobile game business.
That's cool. Early on when I started working in games, I was talking to somebody and they kind of pointed out, have you noticed there's no old game programmers? And crunch is something that happens at most studios, and it's I don't know, it's changed a bit over the years, especially in California. I think it's got a bit softer, but there are still studios and there's still projects, and from time to time crunch happens. It's tough if you're at a studio that says, all right, it's time to crunch from now on. Everyone's going to be here. And it's not so bad when you're a few weeks out, but when you're many months out, it's pretty harsh. And then it's not so bad when you're younger, because you're kind of young, full of energy, don't have any other responsibilities, and you kind of want to prove yourself, professionally. But then you get a bit older, and you're like, wait a second, I've already done that for a good few years, and now, I'm married, I've got a kid, I really want to experience that side of life too.
Right.
And it becomes harder to stay in games if you can't work out a good way of doing it.
Right.
And that's partly a you thing of you putting your foot down about okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to do this, and it's partly the company accepting that and working with you. So, but being you were in the lead seat, and that's a really tough one, because you've got stuff coming at you from all sides all the time, and it's hard not to be there.
Well, and I think that was actually. Now that you mention that, that was actually a bit of a point of contention. I think because, like you said, I was getting to the point where I was like, I'm done with crunch. I want to try my hardest not to have to crunch anymore. And I was looking at my position. I'm in a lead position. And this is something I should be able to kind of work toward. As a lead, I want to try to make it so where my team doesn't have to crunch. And so I was I was actually doing most of my time scheduling and kind of lining up dependencies of tasks and trying to work out, like, what do designers and animators and artists expect from it, like manage their expectations so that we can try to, hit everything on the timeline that we're looking at currently. But I actually ended up kind of hitting a wall where, like, we were hitting our deadlines. We're getting all the stuff done that we said we were going to get done, but other people on the team were starting to say, like, it seemed like they were like, "This is great, we're not having to crunch," but it actually feels kind of weird not having to crunch. Like, I feel, and it started turning into, like, I feel like we could have done more. And whenever I started hearing that, I was like, "Oh, okay, so maybe this is, maybe that's where the gap in passion is really going to hurt, because I don't feel strongly enough that I want to crunch for this game, but other people obviously do. Like, they really wanted it to be as top quality as possible and were willing to sacrifice, like, late nights and weekends and stuff like that. And so I was like, yeah, you guys are going to need to do that. I mean, I can't do that myself. So,
right. I don't want to dwell on this too long, but there's also, like, how valuable is crunch? It's if you do a 100-hour week, it doesn't mean that you've done 2.5 times the work or quality of a 40-hour week.
Right.
Anyway, okay. So a word that keeps on coming up in this is passion, and I can see. I mean, I saw that in you at Heavy Iron, where you were, so passionate about the gameplay, and I see that's what drove you to make the leap and start your own company. So, so you said you developed your own engine for about the first 7-8 months, and then what were you building towards, or what happened next? Or how did it go?
So, while we were working on the engine, we had this really simple, like, brainstorming kind of routine, where we had just taken some words and we wrote a really simple script to just kind of generate random kind of Mad Lib style phrases, and we were using that to kind of try to brainstorm game ideas. And so while we were working on the engine, I actually kind of took that kind of Mad Lib idea, random phrase idea, and gradually worked it up into something that could actually be a really, like, dirt simple app, where you have an app that shows you these random phrases and you can favorite them, and you can look at your history and look at your favorites and kind of ponder on all these things.
So let's just sort of imaginary play that app for a moment. So it might come up with, it's kind of like naming dice or something. It comes up with a couple of words, like, so it could be like shoe tennis or something like that, or
right, or like apocalypse of the shoe, or just completely random things. Actually, I scraped a bunch of NES and Super NES ROMs as a word corpus, and then just took some random phrase structures like transitive verb, the noun, or adjective noun, or whatever. And so it would pick a random phrase structure and then fill it in with random words from that kind of video game corpus, just to try to get it to feel a little bit more gamey.
That's cool. So all right, so that came up with sort of like game ideas, and did that then give you ideas that you wanted to actually build yourselves?
Yeah, so we actually came up with a few ideas from that. Well, first I was going to say that random idea generator was actually our first app. Like, while we were building the engine, that was kind of our test app to make sure that all of our functionality was working, and it was our kind of reason to tie everything together initially. And so we actually released that on the Amazon App Store, the iOS App Store, Play Store, and even the Nook Store, just so that we were trying all these, like, what's it like to go through all these kind of store release processes.
Okay.
And while we were doing that, we were getting started on, like, I had my pet project and Jeremy had his pet project, and we were kind of working on those independently. And like I would give feedback on his as he was working on it. He would give feedback on mine, but usually it was like the two of us kind of working in parallel projects. Mm-hmm. I was working on kind of a puzzle game, and he was working on kind of a Twitch action game, like kind of arcadey feeling. Unfortunately, we didn't actually. Well, we still haven't finished those two projects. We kept working, and it just, on one hand, or one reason for us not finishing, I think, is you get to a point where you're like, you don't want to call it finished. Like you start getting close to the end, mm-hmm. and you just kind of, no, I want to work on. You start generating these big tasks almost to keep the project going, or at least that's the way I guess I work.
I know what you mean. It's like kind of procrastinating, or is that last sort of 10%, or marking it done is really difficult.
Yeah. And we did that for so long that we kind of started running out of savings and needing to start looking into like getting jobs to not be completely like out on the street. And so that's kind of where it was left on the table. Uh-huh. And I've gone back and worked on it a little bit here and there, but yeah, now that I'm full-time employed again, it's really difficult to find the time between being an employee somewhere and being a husband and a father. Yeah, it's difficult.
I've got to say, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but working in games, I mean, I think everybody working in games liked playing games as a kid, and they brought that passion and wanted to work in games and make games, and I've always kind of wanted to do what you did, of strike out on my own and make my own game, but I just get too scared. Like it's like, no, I really like the paychecks now. And so like, how was it emotionally, making that leap and then being in that for how long were you doing that?
It was about a year and a half between official employed jobs.
So like emotionally, what was it like starting, like the middle and end of all of that? Because I've always wanted to do it.
Yeah, it was. Well, the name of the company is actually kind of speaks to that a little bit. And it actually came from the idea generator. As a phrase, like we're flipping through phrases and all of a sudden we see the phrase controlled panic, and both of us look at each other and we're like, yeah, that's a great name for the company, because that's exactly how we felt. It was just kind of, oh my God, what are we doing? Oh my God, what are we doing? No, we've got a plan. It's fine. Just stick to the plan. And oh my God, what's going on? And yeah, it can be a little nerve wracking, but if you've got, like we did, we had a somewhat of a schedule. You can kind of, it's almost like a pacifier, to just kind of stick with the schedule, just keep working on what you knew you needed to work on. And it kind of keeps you from feeling that panic of the fact that you're floating in an ether with like tenuous healthcare and stuff like that.
Yeah. You got your friend who's a vet who's going to, he'll sort you out if you really need it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool. I like the controlled panic. So you did that for a year and a half, and then kid needed healthcare, and you needed healthcare, and a return to paychecks would be good. And I remember talking to you at around that time. We caught up, and you were like, if I'm going to go work for the man again, I'm going to work for a really cool company. And I can't quite remember who you were applying to. I think like SpaceX might have been one of them. Yep. And Google was another one. And I was like, yeah, Phil's doing it right. Because if you're a smart guy, and I know you're sort of at that level to get into any kind of top company. So you chose to go to Google, What? Why did you choose Google?
So one of the reasons I even put Google on the list of places to apply was their kind of moonshot projects that everyone always keeps hearing about. Lately, especially, you've been hearing about like the self-driving cars project. Yeah, right. And that, and there's another project called Project Tango, which is what's his name? Johnny.
Depth sensing tablet.
Exactly. Johnny Lee is the name of the guy who he worked on Kinect at Microsoft. And then
is he the guy that did the Nintendo Wii hacks?
Exactly. Yeah, he did the kind of where you like hold the controller and or attach it to glasses, and as you moved around, it could give you this parallax effect. And I think that was the first time he kind of came on the map. And then he went to Microsoft to work on Kinect, and then after that, I'm not sure if he did anything in between, but came to Google and started working on this Project Tango, where they're basically taking the Kinect hardware and putting it into what was originally a phone form factor. Now they're using a tablet as their kind of main form factor. And I ordered one. It's kind of fun to play around with. Like, we've got APIs for getting point clouds and stuff, and just kind of messing around with the data.
That's cool.
So those two projects in particular were the two that were like, okay, Google's doing some really awesome stuff. Little did I know, like there's so many things going on at Google. Once I showed up and you get access to the whole internal network and you start browsing, like they have an internal code search where you can just search for the gigantic body of code that they have there, and you can just start seeing all this stuff that they've got going on there, and it's a really exciting place to be for in terms of kind of really advanced projects. I while I was applying, I was talking to my recruiter, I kept nudging them, going, you've got your self-driving car and Tango teams. You want to try to put my name in with them and see how I could do. And at the time, both Google X, which is like the self-driving car and the kind of really advanced projects, and Tango, which is part of ATAP, Advanced Tech and Projects Group, they had their own hiring processes. And so basically it was a no-go. They basically said, you kind of need to just find whatever team you can get on, bide your time, and then try to change over later.
I see.
So I got onto the Play Games team, which is kind of like the Game Center on iOS. It's Xbox Live or PlayStation Network kind of a feel, where you've got achievements and you've got leaderboards and you've got your kind of gamer tag and stuff like that. It's an app to kind of be the place where you go to look at all that and to kind of use that to discover new games.
And link up with friends and compare with friends, how you're doing, that kind of thing.
Right. And it's also some client UI that we offer the game services, where game developers can integrate the game services into their games and have kind of the achievement UI that we've written and the leaderboard UI that we've written and stuff like that, as well as the services themselves for like cloud save games, stuff like that.
Cool. So what do you personally do there?
I've been pretty much exclusively doing UI, so like Android UI. I have branched out and worked on a few different things. Like I actually had a task on the Play Store, which is kind of in a really closely related team, where we recently launched pre-registration for not just games but apps in general, to where a developer can say, okay, rather than the life cycle of my app starting on me being finished with it and launching it, we can actually put up a listing page to kind of announce that it's coming. People can register for it, and those registered people will get notifications when I do finally launch the app. And that's been going now for a few months. We've had a few partners. Right now it's just an early access program, and we've had a few partners that we've taken through the whole process, and so we're just kind of making sure that everything works as intended.
Cool. So it's kind of like a pre-sale awareness building thing.
Right.
You get people to sort of sign up, and I guess companies can see what kind of interest level there is in a game. I wonder how far into development you could do that, because a company, I suppose, could start testing their marketing, their advertising and marketing messaging of how can we get people to sign up for this, and testing their cost per install, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Ahead of release, and then when they do release, that they got, like, does everyone download it as soon as it releases?
We've got statistics on that, and I'm not sure if I'm able to say exactly what those are, but the conversion rates for registered users coming back to install is it's much better than what we were originally the goal that we had set was a certain percentage.
Uh-huh.
But it ended up being a lot better than what we were kind of anticipating. So we're happy with it. Unfortunately, I think I can't say exactly what the numbers are, but those numbers will probably start coming out as we get kind of approval with the different partners to share that information.
Well, that's cool, though, that companies can start engaging earlier and get people signed up and sort of in line for the app.
And like you were saying, while it helps you as a developer kind of see how your marketing spending, see how effective it is before your app comes out, it also, not just that, but I think it's important to point out that a lot of people advertise before their game comes out, but this allows you to more effectively kind of capture those people, like the people who see your advertisement. You give them a way to kind of go, okay, yeah, I've put my name on the list, kind of. Rather than just walking by the restaurant, you've put your name on the list to actually come in and eat. And so it's a much more effective, it makes your pre-launch marketing much more effective.
Yeah, that's cool. Anything else new or interesting on the sort of play games area?
Unfortunately, I can't talk about it. There is something coming up that all I can say is it's going to be really, really neat.
It's just me, Phil. You can tell me. It's good. Cool. Well, maybe we'll catch up again, and you can let me know what that is once you can share.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of circle back a little bit just before we finish. So, given when you went and did your startup for a year and a half. And now you've had this time at Google to kind of soak up the brain energy from the Google Cloud. Is there anything you'd do differently if you're going to do the mobile startup thing again? Like, did you make any mistakes last time, or have you learned anything new, or what would you do different?
Yes, I would definitely go back and tell myself, just finish it. Like, don't take such an absurdly long time doing things that you don't really need to do. Like, take a step back, look at all the other apps in the app stores, and see just how much better your app already is than, like, I don't know, 50% of the stuff that's out there. Which that's a pretty easy mark to hit. The 50 percentile mark of all the apps out there is not all that great.
Right.
But yeah, just try to drill that into my former self's head of just, look, you're already doing pretty well. Just get it to a point where you can wrap it up, ship it, and then iterate. Like, I'm still just trying to find the time to tie off the loose ends that I set up for myself so that I can get it out in the stores right now. And every once in a while I feel motivated enough, and I'll get up at midnight and work until 6 a.m. trying to make some headway.
Yeah.
But most of the time it's, okay, I've got to download the newest version of Xcode, and I've got to fix all these problems that have come up from this new version. And 6 a.m. I'm ready to go to sleep, but it's time to go to work, and it ends up killing my motivation all over again. But it's one of those things.
Xcode has that effect on me too. Pretty soon I don't want to do anything.
Yeah, so that's the one thing I would do differently.
What about the decision that you mentioned earlier to make your own engine versus use Unity?
Yeah, I think I would still stick with that. Another thing that I didn't mention, one of the reasons behind doing that was, and this is maybe sounds a little cheesy, but my uncle, who's getting pretty old at this point, he's retired, and my cousin's getting to be middle-aged at this point. Does woodworking. He's got a big garage full of like woodworking tools, and he's passing that on to my cousin. And I looked at that and I went, "That's really cool. Wait, I'm a programmer. What can I pass on? Like, what do I have? I don't have anything physical like that I'm going to be able to pass on to my son." And I'm thinking about this whenever I'm looking at a 1-month-old in my arms. And so I'm thinking, all right, you know what? I'm going to build a code base. Like, I feel like I could build a code base around Unity. I could do it all in C#, and I could make something that's, pretty impressive and nicely architected. But I just feel like doing it around Unity just doesn't feel like it has as much kind of long-term staying power as if I just built it in C++. Sure, C++ might evaporate at some point, but it at least feels like it's got a little bit more long-term staying power than something like Unity or something like that.
At least until Xcode releases a new version that
right.
messes with it.
So
it was interesting. I've never heard programmers say that before. Of like, I'm going to build a code base to pass on to my child. I can just imagine how delighted he's going to be on his 21st birthday. He's there wishing for a car, and you push a thumb drive across the table, and then boom, drop the mic.
This has been waiting for you, my son.
That's cool. I think, again, it's the sort of the passion of creating is kind of what I see there, and sort of passing it on. Sorry, you mentioned Tango and self-driving cars and stuff, and all that stuff gets me really excited. One thing I'm waiting to see done is I want them to put Tango. So just for anybody that's not not familiar with Tango, so it's like 2 cameras. Well, actually, I don't know how many cameras. Cameras with depth sensing equipment that, when it looks forward, kind of like the Kinect, it can see not just what's in front, but how far away it is. And then it can turn that into a cloud of points. And if you walk around with the tablet, you can build a point cloud of a whole building or whatever it is you're walking around. And then once you've got that, you could visualize that point cloud. And what I'd really like to see them do is get sort of quadricopter drones, fit Tango depth sensing stuff to it, and then probably mix in the sort of avoidance type software that Amazon and other people are developing, and then have the drones map the physical world. So you take them to a park, and then a bunch of drones fly up, zoom around the park, taking getting depth data, and and also they'll need GPSs on them so they know where they are. And then you put all of that into a computer and keep on doing it, and basically map the world inside and out of buildings, and then render that with a rendering engine that can handle a lot of point cloud data. I know there's the Euclidean engine is out there that specializes in sort of quickly rendering vast point cloud things. So I think we've got all the technology there that could give us a Google Maps or Google Earth 2.0 or whatever number we're on, that would allow anybody to go anywhere in the world and examine it in full 3D. So you're not just sort of clicking between photospheres and moving 10 yards down the road. You can just smoothly move, pixel by pixel kind of thing through the world, and That's what I'd
Well,
like to do.
I will plug one more project, which is was announced at I/O this year. Was Jump. They're doing a lot of stuff that you're kind of touching on, rather than having independent photospheres, being able to kind of interpolate between two different views, and they're using that to do like actual 3D VR video, to where you can have a photosphere for each eye, basically, kind of. So, yeah. Up until now,
crazy. I just don't get what the camera looks like.
Well, it's actually just a wheel of GoPros, but the way they process the data, it's magic, basically.
Magic. Okay, I can accept that. Magic.
But
Got it.
I'll have to send you a link of a video, the promo video they had at I/O.
I think I heard of the GoPro sort of wheel of GoPros thing, and they said, like, you can build one of these yourselves if you mortgage your house. Yeah, that's cool. All right, Phil, I've greatly enjoyed talking to you. Thank you very much for taking time out to come on the show.
Yeah, no problem. It's a lot of fun.
I'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. If so, please subscribe and tell your friends. You can see the show notes and more online at jollygoodjobs.com/show. I'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode and a better microphone. The show's excellent intro music is by Lazyitis. To find his work, go to soundcloud.com and search Lazyitis. The intro voice and audio production were by Garner Knutson. The Jolly Good Show comes to you from jollygoodjobs.com, where you can see thousands of games industry jobs at over 100 game studios worldwide. Toodle pip.